Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Munoz. This is part of my 29 Days of Magic series where I get to interview an amazing Black woman every single day in the month of February for Black History Month. And this episode, I am super delighted to have Ezinne Okoro, who's the Global Chief Client and Culture Strategy Officer here at VML. She's an amazing story, and I want you to take an amazing listening to what she has to say. Hi, Ezinne. How are you?
Hello, Laura. I am doing well. How are you?
Just interviewing people once in a while, a lot, over the course of a few weeks. Small stuff.
Small stuff in Black History Month. We love to see it. In this leap year, we will take the 29 days.
Thank you. We'll take the 29 days. That's how everyone knows that this campaign got started in a leap year, because it wasn't 28 days of magic. It was 29 days of magic.
Yep.
Because every day matters. So I'm so delighted to have you on the podcast. And the first question, always same, answer is always delightful. And I'm sure yours would be no different. So, Ezinne, what was your first job?
Oh, my very first job was working at McDonald's. And I was probably, I think, 15 or 16. And when I tell you, I absolutely loved it. Seriously, it was it was such a great time. I worked there with my best friend from high school, and we used to do the drive-through and the cashier. It was just a good time. It was a nice time to have a little bit of money in your pocket, be able to show family that you had a sense of independence and responsibility, but then also to the team morale that we were just able to build with the people that worked there was super fun as well too. And what we always loved is when we were in a shift together, which of course the managers ended that pretty quickly because we were having too much fun at work. And then another thing too that I loved is I love being like shift manager, like shift lead. Obviously too young to be like the manager, but shift lead at that point as well too. So that was super fun. And then fast forward how many years later, ended up getting a scholarship to a university via McDonald's. So with their Dream
Oh, wow.
Foundation. Yeah. So I love that connected kind of 360. Yep. So that was my first job.
Wow. So I'm guessing, so wait, what is your favorite thing to eat at McDonald's then? Because you have to still love McDonald's.
Well, so that's the thing. Then you get slighted and you get biased. You're like, oh, I don't want that. Oh, I want that. When you have like special orders. But I think I love the French fries and the apple pies.
Right there with you. I
Yeah.
gotta tell you, the apple pies, they've changed it a little bit, but it's still just, it's a comfort. It makes me think about being a little kid again.
Yeah.
And yeah, the fries, who can go ever wrong with it? Listen, I built my whole business having wanted French fries, and I think it's because I was obsessed with McDonald's French fries when I was a little kid. Because
Yeah.
every Saturday my family would go there as like a kind of like treat for us when we first arrived in the country. And I just remember my mom always makes a joke that one day I'm going to own a McDonald's franchise because
Never know. It's never too late.
you never know. Like, look, the world is like, if you had told me 5 years ago I'd be having this conversation with you, I would be like, no way. So, like,
Yeah.
anything is possible. All
Yeah. Some
right.
hot
So
fries and a hot apple pie. I'm telling you, it will get you. It will get you right where you need to be.
when you need it, it's always hits the spot. It tastes like home, always and forever.
Hmm.
All right. So you get to be awesome at the drive-through at McDonald's, and then you amazingly get a scholarship through McDonald's Renton Foundation, and now you're talking to me. What was the journey like in between to get us together having this conversation today?
I mean, the journey had a lot of ups and downs, roller coasters. I think very unconventional, and but very deliberate. So I think that growing up, I'm Nigerian by birth. My parents are Nigerian. I was born in Nigeria, came to the U.S. at the tender age of 6. Didn't go back until I was 18, and I think that was the first of a transformation for me in my life. And then my freshman year of college at Howard University, I lost my mom, and that was the second biggest transformation in my life. So going to Nigeria at 18 and very different. We talk about Nigeria and Africa in a very different way then that we talk about it now. So now, we're just coming out of the Grammys that aired on TV, and there was a whole section category for Best African Album or Song. That was not happening. Burna Boy performed on the main stage, making history. That was not happening then. So going to Nigeria at 18 was huge. And for me, it realized the level of privilege that I had being in America and living there. And also up until that time, I went by my middle name a lot, which is Christine, because when you're in the US and you're young, you want to conform. You want to be like everyone else. You don't want to be the different kid. And I didn't want to be different. And I think that going to that trip made me appreciate my culture a lot more. So I came back, told everybody, I was like, oh, we have to go by Ezinne now. Like, that's the name. Yep, this is how you pronounce it. I will remind you every single time. No, it's
Wow.
no, right. No,
So
it's
from
not
12,
French.
so from 6 to 18, you went by Christine because you're just like, I hate these people.
Yeah, went by Christine. I mean, in school and stuff, like I'm documented as an A, but like people that were talking to me and stuff was really Christine. So if I met someone today and they was like, oh my God, Christine, I know where they met me in life.
Wow.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, so anyway, so that completely changed everything. Appreciated my name and culture more. And mind you, we were homes, like they speak Igbo, which is our native language, at the house. We ate African food. We went to African parties, but then when I went outside, it was like, I'm Christine. So it was a very balancing of like these two worlds that I'm trying to live into. So fast forward, I lost my mom. I guess at that point I was probably what, like 19, 20-ish or something like that. I don't know, whatever, however old you are when the average person starts college. And at that point, um, I was like, oh, I'm not going back to school. I'm dropping out. I'm devastated. I need to figure this out and all these things. And then, talking to my family, I realized that my mom would want nothing more than for me to excel in school. And she had a business background, and everyone else in the family is really like in medical services of some sorts. So so I focused on that, and I made her proud, and I was an accounting major and just knew I wanted to be in business of some way. Like, I just need to be in business. Accounting was just kind of like the foundation of that. Loved being at Howard at the Mecca. And really at that point, I think probably junior year in high school, I really just blossomed. I think really coming from that trip from Nigeria, I really just blossomed into part of who you're seeing today, just more sure of herself, more aware, understanding the privilege that I see, but also the microaggressions that I deal with, and trying to take all those things head on. In those younger years of being called Christine, it was very super insecure, more shy, really, just not wanting to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing and not have any friends. So I was a lot more reserved. I think now a lot more outspoken and understanding where I come from and where I'm trying to go, and realizing that I make an impact just from being in the room, and for young girls that look like me coming from inner city, going to a public school, all the things the stereotypes that they think of when they think of some of that. And I'm like knocking against all of those things. And that continues to be my vision, mission, and what drives me to do good, is realizing that I probably, in some people's minds, would not have been here. And then I'm trying to think what else is worth highlighting. And then I think too is so how I kind of got to where I am career wise is, so you imagine, so I'm this young bright girl at Howard University campus, taking in all of the culture and everything that comes with Howard, pledged a sorority, so did all those things, did all the
You
traditional
did
things.
all the things. You were in it.
Yes, did all the traditional things that you're like, oh, okay, yes, the Black college experience. Yep, that was me. I was all into that. And then I landed a job at my first professional job at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and knew pretty quickly, and I appreciate that I have that type of hindsight. Knew pretty quickly I wouldn't be there long, so I was there for about a year and a half. I was doing auditing, accounting stuff, compliance, and then I got an opportunity to work at MTV, which is where the bulk of my career sits. And MTV really opened up my eyes to how you can support a business outside of your role. And that's usually what I try to tell people. Like, don't worry about what, you started off sharing like my titles. Like, don't worry about what the title is. I can tell you all the things that I can impact and how I can weave in strategy with culture and people in order to drive growth for a business. I mean, and that's what I do and make an impact in the community as well too. So at MTV, I had a plethora of roles from business strategy to auditing, compliance work, system implementation. So I did a little bit of technology work there as well too. And then ended up in change management. And change management was where I think was like the career change. And in change management, what I was doing was supporting with the system implementation of SAP. And what I what I realized is I love the people and organization element of that. So organizational design, people strategy. So went to get a master's at NYU, focus on organizational leadership and readiness, which then led to having a role as the head of diversity and inclusion for H&M. And I was the first to sit in that role in that capacity. And I loved it because it brought in like my personal favorites of fashion into the workplace. So again, I'm tapping into this new industry and into this new way of working and dealing with like people that work at a store, and that was completely new and trying to infuse culture into a store employee, and then how's that different? It's very different than all of us that are working in like a corporate, office setting, two very different dynamics and a challenging period. But interestingly, when I got to H&M, I knew pretty quickly that I won't be there for long. So again,
really?
that insight kicked in.
What was the reason for that?
Well, I think it's, Laura, I think the thing is, I have a standard of where I want to work and what I want to do. And if that standard is not being met, just from the integrity of me, regardless of what you pay me, I'm just not going to make it there long because I'm compromising things that I don't necessarily stand for. And I think the challenge with H&M is, it's a Swedish company. Like that's where it was born. And that identity, credit to them, which is a good thing, truly infuses in the entire organization. But I think the challenge with that, though, is that I don't think that they were truly open for change and for the influence that the US and China has to their business. The US and the China are their biggest markets. And if those are your biggest markets and the markets that are creating the revenue for you, you you need to listen to them. You need to think about what's happening from a culture perspective in those countries. And that will potentially change how you think of it and how it's happening in Sweden. So it being the HQ being in Stockholm, but then Stockholm was probably like number like 6 or maybe even 7 from a revenue perspective because it's not the biggest. And then I think just their philosophy on management, on promotions, equitable pay. I often felt like I was the smartest in the room, and I have goals. I have goals. I have ambitions, and I think for me, I needed a larger challenge, a larger strategical challenge. Let's say that, right? So I think the work of itself was challenging because you're dealing with the cultures, like I just mentioned. But I think from like a business strategic perspective, it wasn't fueling me in the way that I would have wanted more long term for the long-term goals that I would want. So I was like, okay, this is not really going to be a long-term thing. But I'm here, I'm committed. I will do what I need to do, was giving my recommendations. And as I expected, some of it was falling flatter than I would have wanted. And I have to prove. And I'm like, no, I'm intelligent. I'm giving you sound advice and information. And if this is not the road that you're gonna go, then this is probably not gonna be the road for me. And then that takes me to where we are today, where then I had the opportunity to come and work for Wunderman Thompson, now part of VML, in the capacity of leading as their chief diversity officer globally. And I'll be honest to say I was very hesitant because Because I think that the role of the title, let's say, of Chief Diversity Officer can sometimes be a bit limiting to what I can offer. And in talking to our then CEO about that, I was super clear as to like, I have a vision. This is the autonomy that I need. This is the budget that I need. This is the team that I need. And she was very supportive of those things. And it was super clear, which is why it worked well. And I think at VML, it's kind of the same type of conversation is I want to be able to influence and impact the larger business. And I think that for me, if I sat at a diversity title, I think that that would be a bit limiting to what I can offer, what Ezinne can offer. So it was, it was kind of part design as to, okay, well, what else do you want to touch? What else do you want to be involved in? And then that's how we get to the where we are today. So I'm hoping that um, I hope that that story can be a inspiration to anyone that really you can pivot, right? But I think it's pivoting with strategy, pivoting, understanding your value, and understanding how it can be an asset to a business. So not just saying, oh, I want this role because you think it sounds nice or it's sexy or it's going to get you into these right rooms. Like, no, but what can you truly contribute? But it's possible. It's possible. And I think when the door opens, go in headstrong, and be open to the fact that you may not know everything, but be comfortable in that exploration of what that can offer without having to chase titles, accolades, and all those things, but really understanding where can you provide value to the business and then walk into those steps.
I think that's so important. And thank you so much for sharing that. Because, like, if it's not for you, bounce. I think
Yeah.
sometimes folks are like, oh, I'm going to try and make it work. Like, you know the vibe and you know the
Yes.
feeling and you know yourself. And if you walk into something, no matter how much they're paying you, and if it doesn't sit right with you, you can't do it. Because it's not going to bring up the best in you at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day.
Mm-hmm. And we
Um,
spend so much time, like, where we're employed, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're working on behalf of a company. So it's like, where do you want to spend your time? And at some point, yes, there's bills and all those things. So I'm definitely not telling anyone to just be like, all right, I'm out, bye.
quit your job,
'Cause-
quit your job.
right. Because I definitely did not do that. But I think in every transition, I would 99% sure that my manager was not surprised that I left, because those are the type of very clear conversations that I was having, and telling them like, okay, I need more of this, or can we try this, or I'm not seeing myself here this, and actually I want you to help me and sponsor me, introduce me to people to get me an opportunity. So I think I've established those relationships because I want to make sure my managers look good. I want them to excel as well too, and they have their own ambitions as well too. So if I can help them with their ambitions and they can help me with mine, it's a win-win. But it's having that level of professionalism and clarity to be able to speak to them and say, like, this is not technical, this is probably not going to work for me long term, but here's what I can do, here's what I can provide, and here's what I want. Here's what I'm asking for you to help me do with.
And it's so important. Again, I think sometimes folks don't understand the importance of clarity and saying that,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, I'm afraid to ask. Oh, I don't, I'm just here so I don't get fined or lose my job. Versus, I need to have an honest conversation about what I need to do in order for me to be successful to stay here.
Yeah.
And I think in a post-pandemic universe, we all kind of know what we will and will no longer tolerate because we all were
Yes.
able to stay at home for 2 years.
And think about it.
Exactly. Like
Yes.
it's in your head. You were like looking at the wall being like, wow, this does not work for me. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, it's so
So
true. It's so true. And I think too is, yeah, I think the pandemic really opened up the eyes, because I think people realized then, I think fortunately, I think I already knew because of some of those things that had happened to my life early on, but people were really identifying like their purpose. Like, what is my purpose? And if my workplace is not really aligning to that purpose or doesn't allow me the bandwidth to be able to exercise that purpose, then I don't know if I want to be there anymore, right? And so I think it's trying to find that marriage between your purpose and what's paying you. And that's the only way that we will be able to be mentally well, because like I said, we spend so much time working. So we need to figure out, like, do I like the people that I work with? Like, can I deal with them every day? And granted, listen, I don't like every single person. I don't, right? But it's enough
Mm-hmm.
where I'm like, I'm good. Like I am good. I see where my contributions are. I feel valued. I feel heard. And I think that those things go a long way, even if things are like rocky or shaky, or maybe you're not at the best title, or maybe you don't have the best budget you wanted. But there has to be some considerations to some of those things that you do want, unless you're just not gonna make it there. And then that's okay. You don't have to.
You don't have to. I think that's the thing. You can say no. You can walk away. You can try and do something different. And again, I think the pandemic has played a huge part of this. So, thinking about all the stuff that you've been able to do, especially in, your various roles in the last few years, talk to me about the time you had a challenge. You're like, there's no way you're going to get through this. And then you did.
Mm. I'm gonna cite it back to I'm gonna talk about H&M, because I think sometimes I have the tendency of just letting things roll off my back. I'm like, oh, whatever. I don't even want to go there. But I think it's worth sharing in the context that you just brought up the question. And if I lean back to 2020, which was a hard year. And I remember being on some leadership calls, and then like I would just text somebody and be like, oh yeah, no, today's not the day. I'm not gonna get on that call. Like I'm just not gonna do it, because I had to make sure that my wellness was prioritized. And it was days that we were dealing when we knew this thing was actually called COVID. And we were shutting down, or in the process of shutting down, with the then president of the US and the way that he was delivering news. So it was so much uncertainty. And like I mentioned, at H&M, we have the employees that obviously work in the office, but then we have those employees that work in the store. And when you are at a table, when we're discussing the wellness of employees at a store, and whether or not you're going to close the store, are they going to come in? Are you providing hazardous pay for them? The people that are we going to keep the office open? Are we going to require people? I know some of that sounds foreign now. Like, are you going to keep the office open? Because offices have been closed. We've been working from home. But remember, at that time, everyone was going to the office every single day. So now it's like, is the office actually going to be open? Are you going to make people go in? Are you going to furlough people? And I think it was the first time too hearing about furloughs in a corporate organization and not just in the government. So it was challenging. It was such a challenging part of my career, especially because too, mind you, before H&M, I was at MTV, Viacom, now Paramount, CBS. I was not in HR. I was never in HR. So now we're talking about very specific HR questions, but the good thing that we did is that we invited multiple stakeholders in the room. So it wasn't just like the HR team making these decisions. I was there from that inclusion equity experience, because the majority of our employees in the stores are people of color, and they come from different social economic groups as well too. So it's very, very different from the representation we had in the office. So it's not one for one at all, just from a diversity perspective. So needed to think about that as well. And then like a lot of our revenue was also coming from the office. I mean, excuse me, was coming from the stores. So whole nother factor to put in. So it was challenging in the sense of very different opinions. So if you think about someone that's specifically in growth, like they are managing sales. So they're looking at it from like, if you close the offices, this is how much money I mean, if you close the stores, this is how much money you're going to lose. Then you have like employee relations, and dealing with like they had unions then. Union people that represented unions, like, okay, well, if we're gonna be here, you need to add this pay. Then you have the CFO is like, well, we can't add any pay because we're already talking about losing sales. So literally, and then I'm here like, well, we can't have people of color risking their lives to keep your stores open, and then we're not compensating them for something, or we're not providing them with something. Like, what is our level of assurance and wellness, because they're going through it? They may have families that are actually being diagnosed, having COVID right now. We don't even know what COVID is, but all we do is see people dying. So it was super challenging to manage through all of those opinions and then ultimately make decisions that are impacting like direct individuals. And I will never forget where we were on the calls. I think what I was talking about before with some of the leaders in the at the HQ office in Sweden, and the part of it like they just didn't get, and then I think at that point too, we just televised the murder of George Floyd. So now you're adding this on top of it again. Like I said, the store employees are mostly people of color. So a lot of people were just like outright. Stores were being vandalized, or, employees themselves were protesting against working, just like the way that protests were happening across the world. So you're managing through all those things. So it's like, what do you say to them? How do you assure them? How do you ensure their safety? How do you tell them, yes, you have the constitutional right to protest, but your shift starts right now, but they want to go protest. So what are you doing? How do you support in that outrage? And then especially me being a woman, a Black woman, also completely understanding their outrage and wanting to be at the front lines with them and encouraging them. You know what? They don't want to they don't want to give you the day off. Walk out. Walk out. You have that right. So it was a very, talk about being a leader and being in the leadership team, but then also being just like a citizen of the world and understanding that, and then going through my own rage and disappointment. So it was a lot. It was a lot. That period of time, I know a lot of people went through a lot of things, but I will have to give my hats off to people that are managing people like at the front lines, at the stores, that was not an easy thing to do. And then again, so I'm here on the calls with leaders in Sweden, especially after the murder of George Floyd. And they're like, oh, well, this is a very isolated situation in the US. And I'm like,
oh, Lord.
I'm like, no, the hell is not.
Oh, Lord, have mercy.
I was like, no, the hell is not. Like, are you not watching the same clips that yes, you may not feel it in Sweden, but I see it in the UK. I see it in Paris.
Germany,
I see it in like all your neighboring countries. Is happening, right? Like people are actively protesting. So maybe where you are and where your headquarters is, you didn't see it, but it's happening. So I kid you not, when that person made that made that statement, I had to talk to my CEO. I was like, I can never be on the phone with that person ever again. And we need to have a conversation with that person because that was completely inappropriate and insensitive. And it was challenging managing through that. Like I said, like I have had my fair share of micro and micro aggressions, but that one was just blatantly and I literally told a couple of leaders in the US and in Sweden as well. I was like, well, if you have leaders that are saying comments like that, you all would never get anywhere. And this person was very influential, not the CEO or anything like that, but very influential. And I'm like, you will never get anywhere ever. Like you won't get anywhere. So that was the challenge at the time. But the upside of all of this, how I was able to get through it is being very vocal, understanding that I had rights, that I can express my opinion and not be shy about it. Because what I also learned and said to myself repeatedly during that time, if you at your big age, at your big title, cannot address it and confront them, how is someone in the store going to be able to do that? So I had to address all those things head on. And the good thing is, like, they listened. I mean, they listened. We were in numerous conversations. How can we fix this? What can we do? I was in every single call you can think of, which was very time consuming. But I think they knew then that they did not have the answers and they could not mess it up. So definitely a value add in my contributions there. But then I think at that time it really, really, really cemented it. I mean, that I needed to leave. And I did.
I love that for you.
Yeah.
Because and also, oh my God,
Yeah.
like, Jesus.
I know. Sometimes I don't even go through all of this because it's so much to unpack. Woo!
I
Those
mean,
months was
Lord, that is a lot of
something.
that. I hope you had a lot of therapy post, because Jesus, the
So,
PTSD.
I'm telling you, those months was something. But they're doing H&M is doing they're doing much better. I guess they have my notes.
They saw your notes,
They
and they're
saw
like,
my
oh,
notes.
observe and report, observe and report.
Yes, yes. So talk
Good
about
to
making your
see.
footprint, right? Making your footprint and leaving your mark and your legacy. I'm happy and there's no hate there. I'm happy to see that they're progressing and they're doing better in the world. But and then so just to give you more context, this was just 2020. I think when COVID news started coming up was about March-ish. I think they finally like closed airports because I remember I had a trip like mid-March. So prior to that, I was already like, oh, this is just not going to work with these people.
Mhm.
So this was just like, oh, this is the peak, because I was like, okay, well, maybe if I have some more conversations and if I can do a thing or two, maybe we can last like at least 5 years. But no, 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 no. After that, I was like, okay, I'm done. Yeah. So actually, before I joined Wyndham and Thompson, I was going on sabbatical because of all that stuff. Yeah, I was like, I just need, yeah.
Justifiably so,
Yes.
girl. My king.
Yes.
Jesus.
So now you can understand my bit of a hesitation when Mel Edwards calls me and like, hey, we would love for you to come to Wyndham and Thompson. I'm like, oh goodness, to do what?
Like,
I was
what
like,
you what
what
do y'all want
exactly
from
is that gonna
me?
look like? Yeah, I was like, what is that gonna look like? That's why we had to have several conversations as to what that even looks like. Because I wanted to be super clear. I learned, and then that's what this is all about. It's all about learning and doing better. And I learned from that H&M experience. And I'm sure people on the outside are like, I can't believe she left H&M. Yep, because all that glitters is not gold. So it's like you learn and then you move on.
That's the key part about all of this.
Yep.
Um, and I think it's just a part of the story you have to tell. And
Yeah.
honestly, thank you for your candor, because I think this is also part of the story where oftentimes we hear these stories, we see these things about, oh, Black women getting these big jobs and then they leave, and you're like, oh, I see, this is affirmative action hire, they can't really cut it, blah blah blah. I was like, do you have any idea of the foolishness? No.
Right, right, right,
Um,
right. And it's so interesting you bring that up. Yeah, because I think people send me headlines all the time. And when I was seeing the recent departures of some of the senior women, Black women specifically, that were leaving diversity-led roles. And I, people text. They're like, oh my God, like what's that? It's not a conspiracy. It was like, you go through it, and each of them are not in the same exact space and are not in the same reasons for why they left, right? I think like the headlines spin this big story as to like, yes, there's a lot of stress that comes with the job. There's a lot of pushing and all those things. But I think some people like reached a point where there's like, okay, well, I've done all I can do, and
mhm.
now it's time for me to go explore something else, and I think that was also part of, I mean, aside from that specific stuff that was happening with like COVID and racial lines, I think for me, I knew early on, like, okay, I've done all that I can do for them. Someone else needs to then take it from here, and that's okay, right? It's not about anyone being pushed out. It's not about them feeling like it's not like they were weak or they weren't supported. No, they did what they can do with the capacity that they were given, and now they're gonna do something else, and that's completely fine with them.
And that's the bottom line. And again, you have to, again, we did not survive a pandemic to play small or to accept things the way we are. And if it doesn't serve me, bye. Like, straight
Mm-hmm.
up. Like, you can't do anything more than that. You can't expect people to do more than that. I often, say this thing when like, oh, what, Black women are like superheroes. No, we are not.
Right.
We're not from Krypton. Like, you're from Nigeria, I am from England. We are not from another superhero planet that means that we can put mountains on our back and have the whole weight of the world on our shoulders at all times. Yeah,
Yeah.
ain't gonna happen. And
So true.
we have to be honest about that. And it's
Yeah.
hard sometimes for us. We're like, oh, we want to make things right, do the thing. Like, yeah, no, bye. So I appreciate
So
that
true.
you about your honesty about that. And kind of circling towards this now, since you've gone on done all this and you've made you've had a really awesome transition into something new here in the land of Wonderman, now to VML. What do you do for your self care?
Ooh, I binge watch TV. I sometimes I'm like, I don't even know how I even have time to watch these programs, but I watch them and then I doze off, which is fantastic. So I binge watch on just different series. Most of them are like drama or like those like history ancient type of movies. If you think about like The Crown on Netflix or something like that. And then the other thing too is I love to visit rooftops.
Okay.
So because I love an ambiance and a scene, so if I can visit the quote unquote best rooftops or the hidden rooftops in a city, I love that. And then lastly, I have a regular like massage treatment, and that's really my time to like I completely unplug, listening to like nice jazz instrumental music, and allowing like my body to be recharged and my blood circulation, oxygen levels. So that's it's a favorite time of mine to be able to do that. I try to do it on a regular basis if I can. So those are my
Awesome.
three
Those are
self-care,
your three.
very,
Okay, so
very different things. Yes.
I'm with you in the massage.
Yes.
The rooftop. So you can't just say you love rooftops and then not say what your favorite rooftop is.
Oh my God, do I even have a favorite? There's so many. It depends on the city. Okay, so one that I love is Amsterdam. There's a hotel there called the Consortium, and they have like a rooftop and they have a garden. It's absolutely gorgeous. What's a good one in New York? A good one in New York. They always change the names, but an obvious one is the Moxie, but there's another one, Elise, I think is what it's called.
Oh, Elsie.
Elsie.
Yes,
Yes,
that's one of my faves.
yes. Elsie is a fantastic one, and it's still a little low key sometimes. But yeah, I think it's probably not as frequent as like a Moxie, but yes, Elsie's amazing.
Yeah. I might know the owners, and I may have thrown a party or seven there. So,
Oh
so
yes, we almost did our wedding there, but I can't remember our wedding reception. But I think the space was a little too unconventional than what we had envisioned. We were a little bit more traditional. I mean, we didn't do like a ballroom with like a carpet. Um, but we did go to like another hotel in Staten Island, but they were on my top list.
oh yeah, I've known the owners from before they opened it, and it
Oh, nice.
it has it is an epic place. I threw a big milestone birthday party there and took over the whole place right before
Oh,
COVID. It was
nice.
February 2020. I remember being like, and then when everything shut down, I'm like, Laura, you threw the last party ever, didn't you? I'm like, yeah, well, when I look back.
You know what's so funny? I was telling someone too, because someone was looking for a birthday location for a milestone party. I was like, you need to just do that place. You need to buy it out. I was
Yeah.
hyping them. I was like, you need to just buy it out. It's perfect. Yeah, no, I really, really like it. Oh, that's okay. So I need to know to hit you. You of course you know all the places anyway.
I mean, if I didn't, I like, how would I have my job, girl?
Yes, yes, yes. You know all the
Okay,
fine
so you're on the
places.
Crown. What season are you on the most recent season of the Crown?
I just finished it. Yep. So I guess
Ah,
the series is done. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
yeah. Well, although I mean, with the news about King Charles today, like they have to do one more season.
Oh yeah, I literally just saw that news as I was walking over here to
And
get
I
on the
was
call
like,
with you.
Lord,
Yeah,
really?
I know, I know,
like,
I know.
like
All the new, it's just,
all the dramatics, all
time.
the dramatics. Yeah.
It's a time. I'm currently on. I just started, but Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which I guess is the remake.
Oh, the remake, yeah.
Yeah, with Childish Gambino. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, I
Mm.
actually have started watching For All Mankind
Mm-hmm.
on Apple TV,
Yeah.
and
Is
like
it
this
good?
is like an underrated. gem. I had no idea.
Hmm. I'm
Like,
gonna put that on my list because I was looking at it, but I was like, I don't know if this is for me.
it's peak white nonsense, but similar to The Crown, but
Okay.
it's a space race. But it is kind of it is really interesting. It does kind of hook you in because you're like, wait a minute, what would have happened if these things did happen? Because the whole thing is that, like,
Mm.
a few subtle changes in who the president is and
Mm-hmm.
how the future, especially how the future for women looks, and like it is
Mm.
very intriguing to see what, again, some slight changes in history end up changing everything, and what that means for the world, what it means for race relations, but even how it doesn't change race relations with all these other advancements, is really interesting and fascinating. And so, yeah, my friend told me about it a couple of weeks ago, and I started watching, and I was like, what? And like, oh wait, this reminds me of Succession all over again, where it's like big white nonsense, and I'm
Yeah.
into it.
I was an avid watcher of Succession as well. So yes, I'm into all of it.
And it's like, listen, because someone made a joke recently that, like, there should have been a Byron Allen type character in Succession. I'm like, that
Mm.
actually is an interesting critique, because I feel like it was good there were no black people involved, because we're like, y'all are all so messy.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, but it's like, what kind of different series would it have been if you had the Alexander Skarsgård character as well as a Byron Allen style character, both aiming for ATN,
Right,
and
right. Yeah,
what
yeah.
that would have, yeah, and how that would have matched up with the kids and with the dad and everything. So,
Yeah.
um, I feel like Roman would have lost his mind if he had to do a black man. So,
Right.
she's like, "You're poor. I am more
Right.
than you."
So true. So, and the reason why that's because sometimes when I say that that's my self-care thing, people are like, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, because for me, it's brainless. Like I'm not.
It's
There's no thought.
brainless.
There's no thought
No thoughts
there. I'm
whatsoever.
literally watching at my leisure. I love like cinematography and just kind of looking at like how things are built and like guessing if things are AI or I love film, the production of film. So it kind of sparks that creativity in me as well too. So, and I like to see like how the costumes are. So it's
No, of
brainless.
course.
Yeah.
Costumes are all. I mean, the costumes, the clothes. I mean, I'm
Yes.
all about all of that stuff. Are you
Yes.
kidding?
Yes.
Please. Um, that's why I love Bridgerton, because that is just most like,
Oh,
what?
yes.
Those costumes are just beyond. So last question for you. Do you have a give and or ask of the audience?
Ooh, I do.
Go for
Why
it.
not? So my give, I like to give first. My give is one thing I want to do this year, and I haven't really put the framework together, but if anyone is listening, I do want to dedicate a couple of hours a month to talk to people, men, women, young, old, doesn't matter, about just career opportunities, pivoting, transition, making impact, or just kind of like figuring themselves out in the workplace. And personally too. I don't talk too much about my personal life, but I mean that's also a thing as well. And I want to give that time because I think that people have poured into me so much in different ways, and I want to be a bit more intentional about that. And I used to do that a lot before, but life changes. So I want to kind of get back into that. So what I want to give is a gift of time. So if any, and this not taking any pitch calls. This is not a pitch. If you're selling something, not interested. This is truly just for people to be like, I wish I could just ask somebody about this, or I wish I can learn how they went from A to B, or whatever that can be. So I want to give time. And what I ask for people, especially those that may be like journalists, entrepreneurs, podcasters, even influencers, et cetera, just really anyone to give more grace to people that are in roles of influence and of power, especially those that are asked upon to lead diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging in any aspect. It's not an easy thing to do. And I think sometimes you get feedback and heat from leaders or peers that don't look like you. And then you also get it from people that do look like you that question your impact. And I think that that's a hard thing to manage through, where these are the people that are advocating for you, even in the smallest ways that you don't know. So I just ask anyone's listening to give grace to those that are called upon to lead in those capacities. So anyone from someone that's managing your employee resource groups to someone that's leading the full department, I think just give them that grace in doing so. And my gift is time.
Awesome. And talk about it, because like I don't envy you guys at all.
Yes. You get it
Shout
from
out.
all angles, all angles.
You getting smoke from everything.
Everybody.
So
Everybody.
I tip my hat to all of y'all and be like, not it.
Yeah.
So
But you are a huge supporter, and that's the thing. I think one thing I try to keep telling people too is like you can influence regardless of the title, right? Like we're all leading diversity, inclusion, and equity, right? We're all recommending people that probably look like us from marginalized groups, So I think like and you're supporting them. You're supporting them by showing up as a leader to join a panel because we asked you to. Hey, Laura, what are you doing? Can you join this conversation? Can you meet these group of students? Can you amplify this message? So yes, you are in it, adjacent.
I put a toe or three in occasionally. So, but I know how hard the work that you all do and how important it is.
Yeah.
And again, like in any way we can be helpful and supportive, I think it's a box you must do. Just check it and be on. But so you've just been such a delight. It's been so fun chatting with you. You have such an amazing wealth of experience and an incredible story. Thank you so much for your candor and your humor, and being part of 29 Days of Magic.
Yes, thank you first of all, for even ideating the idea and going forward with it, because I think a lot of times we have things in our minds and then they go nowhere. So thank you for that, and thank you for creating space to recognize us people that are doing the work. Appreciate you.
Of course. And that is our show.